So good evening, friends. We are meeting again with the Organon of medicine, and we have to learn again the next aphorism. We have finished in last lecture the aphorism number 7, which has a lot of things in which we have discussed about what are the maintaining causes. Then we have discussed about the totality of the symptoms and the three definitions of totality of symptoms which we have discussed in detail. The first, basically, the Hahnemannian definition, it is an outwardly reflected picture of the internal essence of the disease, that is of the affection of vital force. That is as defined in seventh aphorism that we have discussed. Kent has given little different approach. He said that it is sum of all characteristic symptoms is called as a totality of the symptom. And when Boningosen have explained, he has explained in his own words that it is sum of all complete symptoms is called as totality of the symptom. So these three things we have discussed, and at the same time we have discussed the expression, how these internal derangement getting expressed in the form of signs and symptoms. And in order to get a right case and in order to get a right remedy at both levels, you require to use an art, because with the help of an art you can reach to the right simulum and you can cure that patient. So this is what we have discussed about the seventh aphorism, and one footnote we have read. The another footnote which we have not yet finished and which gives again one more important question in the exam, that is the single symptoms. So today we have to first learn the footnote number 4, and after learning the footnote number 4, then we have to reach towards the eighth aphorism. So we'll start with the footnote number 4. In all times, the old school physician, not knowing how else to give the relief, have sought to combat and, if possible, to suppress by medicines here and there a single symptom. Underline this single symptom. Single symptom is short note topic. It is a short note topic. A single symptom from among the number in diseases, a one-sided procedure which, under the name of symptomatic treatment, has justly excited universal contempt, because by it not only was nothing gained, but much harm was inflicted. So what he is explaining, that generally in allopathy they used to consider out of the many symptoms one of the symptoms where they can use the principle of contraria contraris curatur, means opposite cures opposite. So if the patient has 10 symptoms and out of which one symptom is the constipation, then they finds it out a remedy for constipation in the form of purgative, and they prescribe that remedy to that patient. What happens after giving a purgative in material form? It acts through the primary action. Temporarily, patient might feel better at the level of constipation. For time being, he may be palliated, and when the action of that palliative, that purgative disappears, the original symptoms of the disease reappears. And when they reappear, they are always in increased strength. So this is quite common thing which happens in such types of cases. So whenever you palliate any disorder by any means, at that time, rule is that palliation is always followed by an aggravation. And this is what he wants to explain, that when you do such a utilization of a single symptom as is done in antipathy, this is not at all useful. He says over there, nothing is gained after using remedy on the basis of symptomatic treatment. But what happens, in fact, much harm was inflicted. It produces much harm. Sometimes a disease may, after palliation, may lead towards the suppression. So it transforms from the less important organ to the more important organ. What is the difference between palliation and suppression? Palliation is nothing but the temporary alleviation of the symptoms, or temporary relief of the symptoms is called palliation. And after palliation, the original symptoms reappears. But when a terminology suppression happens Suppression is nothing but the transformation of the symptoms of the disease from the organs of less importance to the organs of greater importance is called as a suppression. So, for example, a patient who was suffering from skin disorder since long time and he is using some local application over there again and again. Sometimes it was palliated and again reappearing, but sometimes it happens that it disappears from that place. So after lot of application of local steroids, one of the day that eczema may vanish and it enters somewhere inside. Depending upon the susceptibility of that individual. If the patient is susceptible at the brain level, it enters into the brain producing epilepsy. If it enters inside the lungs, it produces pneumonitis, it may produces asthma, it may produces bronchitis. If it is goes into GI tract, it may produce irritable bowel syndrome. The disease remains to be the same, but it goes from less important organ to the more important organ, and to which we label by the name of suppression. Continued use of medicines in such a manner, depending upon single symptom, always leads towards such types of harm. And this is what he wants to explain over there. He says over there, but much harm was inflicted. What he further says is very important. A single one of the symptoms present is no more the disease itself than a single foot is the man himself. And he explains over there, if you are considering one symptom is the totality of the symptom, is the wrong thing. Whatever may be the totality, out of one symptom is as good as you are considering the human being and only 1 foot of the human being. It is only one part of it. It is not whole. And you have to deal with the whole. When you have to treat, you have to treat the totality of the symptoms as we do in homeopathy. So this is the comparison between homeopathy and allopathy. In allopathy or antipathy, they used to take into consideration one symptom, whereas in homeopathy, we used to take into consideration the totality of the symptoms. This procedure was so much and more reprehensible. Reprehensible means it is a wrong thing, which has in Marathi we called it as a doshaspad, doshaslili, reprehensible, which has a fault in it. This procedure was so much the more reprehensible that such a single symptom was only treated by antagonistic remedy. Antagonistic remedy means a remedy which is based on the principle of contraria contraris curantur, that is antipathy. Treated by an antagonistic remedy, therefore only in an enantiopathic and palliative manner. Enantiopathic is nothing but the antipathic measure, whereby after slight elevation means temporary relief, temporary feeling of better is elevation. It was subsequently only rendered all the worse. So when palliation happens to be there, that palliation is always followed by a aggravation. So any patient, when you are treating on the basis of single symptom and by using the material doses, it always transforms from the less important organ to more important organ in the form of suppression, or either a palliation in the form of just slightest elevation. And when it returns back always in an aggravated form. So whenever you are writing the answer to this question, you have to give the reference single symptom. It is given in footnote number 4 to the aphorism number 7 by Hahnemann in comparison with the totality of the symptoms as given in 7th aphorism. Here in allopath, they used to use the single symptom, or antipath. When they use the antipathic measure, they used to consider the single symptom. Then you have to explain this, whatever he has mentioned over there, and the demerits of using the single symptom. That's what you have to write over there. So this is a short note topic. One must prepare those who are students. This is very important entity. So we have learned the 7th aphorism. Many questions are there on 7th aphorism. The causa occasionalis, or maintaining cause, that is the first question. Second question was exciting cause. Then footnote was there, our first early footnote, which was examples of the maintaining causes. Then second question was totality of the symptoms, a big topic, around 10 marks, short note. Then the third thing, that is the um, full question. Homeopathy is not only the science but also an art. That question is also again on this aphorism. And then in this footnote, a single symptom, that is another question. So many questions from exam point of view, they are there in this aphorism and both the footnotes. Now we have to turn towards the next aphorism, the aphorism number 8. And this aphorism number 8 already we have discussed while discussing the first, the James Cross introduction. We have discussed two words which are mentioned over there, the causat effectus, causat causa. You remove the effects, you will remove the cause automatically. And same he wants to explain over there in this aphorism. So Hahnemann have explained this in the aphorism, and in short, James Cross explained it in the work causat effectus, causat causa. The meaning of both the aphorism and these both are important from exam point of view. Either they can ask you causat effectus, causat causa as a short note, the answer is one and same, and another, removal of the totality of the symptoms means removal of the disease in its whole extent, explained in detail. That is also another full question can be asked on the aphorism number 8. So we'll learn aphorism number 8. It is not conceivable, nor can it be proved by any experience in the world. Conceivable means which you can think, which you can speculate. Conceivable, kalpana karta येण्याजोगं. Nor can it be proved by any experience in the world that after the removal of all the symptoms of the disease and of the entire collection of perceptible phenomena, there should or could remain anything else besides health, or that the morbid alteration in the interior could remain uneradicated. Uneradicated means which cannot be removed. So what he explains is very correct over there, that whenever you take into consideration the totality of the symptoms which he has defined in earlier aphorism, and you find it out the remedy for that case. You don't know cause of the disease because cause is hidden in the interior at the dynamic level. So homeopath will not going to find it out the cause of the disease, but he will going to find it out what is the presentation of the disease. And presentation always lies in the signs and symptoms in the form of totality. If you take into consideration the totality, find it out a matching totality in the remedies, that is what is called as anti-type totality, and you find it out that right remedy in right potency, if it is given, all the symptoms when gets vanished under the action of that medicine, there remains nothing. So what remains is nothing but the state of health. Now the state of disease has gone, and what remains is only the state of health. Again, it brings back the original state of health, where mind, body, and soul runs in a perfect harmony with the help of vital force. That specifically, a typical original state of the health again reappears. And this is what the Hahnemann wants to explain. That instead of finding it out a cause of the disease or going theoretically, it is always better to find it out what is the symptomatology. Just find it out what is the totality, match that totality, find it out a right remedy, and give that remedy. Instead of finding it out that cause in the form of some material entity, it is better to treat that patient. And when you treat on the basis of totality of the symptoms, again original state of health reappears. So he explains over there in this aphorism that removal of the totality of the symptoms is nothing but the removal of the disease in its sole extent. And this question is always asked in the exam, either a full question, either a short note. And same answer is there when you write the answer to the causat effectus, causat causa. You remove the effects, you will remove the cause automatically, because you don't know what cause is. Cause is always hidden in the interior of the human being in the form of dynamic. So, eighth aphorism, write over on your book, removal of the totality of the symptoms means removal of the disease in its whole extent. This sentence should be there. Vishala Sangetu. Then there is a footnote to this paragraph. And this footnote is again very important. This footnote you have to understand. In this footnote, Hahnemann have compared the homeopathic perspective in relation with the allopathic perspective. During Hahnemannian time, there was a big journal from the modern medicine. It is called as the Hufeland Journal. The Dr. Hufeland was the big allopath. In fact, he was the chief of the old school during Hahnemannian time. And when he was the chief, at that time, he used to run our journal, which is called by the name of Hufeland Journal. And this Hufeland Journal was used to publish during that time. Hahnemann have written many things to the Hufeland. He has mentioned what the homeopathy is, and Hahnemann was explaining the logically each and everything. But still, in his journal, he has made one comment, and that comment is mentioned in this footnote, and that's why it has a lot of importance. So we'll read this footnote, footnote number 5, and again there is a full question on this topic for the students. So we'll start with the fifth footnote. When a patient has been cured of his disease by a true physician in such a manner that no trace of the disease, no morbid symptoms remains, and all the signs of the health have permanently returned, how can anyone, without offering an insult to the common sense, affirm in such an individual the whole bodily disease still remains in the interior? So what Hahnemann explains that when you consider the totality of the symptoms of the patient, you match the totality with the antitype totality from the medicines, and when you give that remedy and all the symptoms disappear, and still people say that you have removed the symptoms only and disease remains inside. And that's why Hahnemann put this question, how can it be possible to tell the others that still a disease remains inside interior? And what he says, and Ed, the chief of the old school, Hufeland, asserts this in the following words. And this is called as Hufeland statement. Homeopathy can remove the symptoms, but disease remains. Underline a full question, explain in detail. And this sentence was there, Wide Homeopathy, that is the journal, page number 27, the first paragraph and 19 numbers line. This he maintains partly from now Hahnemann explains why Hufeland had made such a comment. Hahnemann have given two reasons behind that. We'll read that first and then I will explain why there was a thought in Hufeland's mind regarding it. This he maintains partly from mortification at the progress made by the homeopathy to the benefit of mankind. Hahnemann says that mortification म्हणजे अपमान, मानखंडना. त्याला असं स्वतःचा अपमान वाटला की ॲलोपॅथ being an allopath, homeopathy is developing and progressing and homeopathy is curing the disorders, and that's why partly because of man, what he says, this he maintains partly from mortification at the progress made by the homeopathy to the benefit of mankind, and partly because he still holds thoroughly material notions respecting disease, which he is still unable to regard as the state of being of the organism, wherein it is dynamically altered by the morbidly deranged vital force as an altered state of health, but he views the disease as something material, which after the cure is completed, may still remain lurking in some corners in the interior of the body, in order someday during the most vigorous health to burst forth at its pleasure, which with its material presence. What is it? This might be because of one more thing, because still he was considering disease in the form of some material. This was the another thought in the Hahnemann's mind. This might be the reason because of which Hufeland says that the homeopathy can remove the symptoms, but disease remains. We'll discuss this in a different manner. first think about the, for example, we'll take an example of a typhoid. How you will diagnose the typhoid fever? Anyone? How will you diagnose the typhoid fever? What test you used to do to diagnose the typhoid fever?
Vidal
Vidal
test.
test.
Yes, very correct. Vidal test. It is simple. Vidal test. So what is Vidal test? What it diagnoses? What it shows? Vidal.
Salmonella type.
Hello. Vidal test shows the antibodies against the antigen of a typhoid. That is, they are the antibodies present. It is an indirect test. It is not a direct test. So, whatever may be the antibodies against the Salmonella typhi, they are there in the Vidal test. So, when you do a Vidal test, the antibodies are formed, and those antibodies, the titer of the antibodies shows that Vidal is positive. If it is 1:80 or more than 1:80, the Vidal test is considered to be a positive. So, it means that you are not measuring or you are not observing the antigen, but you are observing the antibodies against the Salmonella typhi. For what purpose the antibodies develops? What is the purpose behind the development of antibodies? Anyone? Why do antibodies develop? Yes, to kill the antigen. Simple answer is to fight against the antigen. So, my question is that when you give a homeopathic remedy, what happens? When you give the homeopathic remedy, what will happen? It will stimulate your immunity. The antibodies will increase because ultimately antibodies is the fight given by our body against an antigen. To fight against antigen, antibodies will increase. So after giving a right remedy, for example, your patient is suffering from typhoid fever and he is in a septicemic state and he is having a very high grade fever, but his pulse rate is too much high. It is 150. He's running the temperature 101 and his tongue is absolutely clean as if varnished and he is in a toxic phase. So your remedy is very clear. What is your remedy?
Pyrogenum.
Yes, very correct. Pyrogenium. So if you give pyrogen to the patient, what will happen? When you give pyrogen to the patient's symptoms disappear, patient's fever disappears, patient again comes into the state of health. But when you give the pyrogen, it stimulates the antibodies, it stimulates the immune system. Automatically, the titer must increase. So if it was 1:80 positive, now it may reach to 1:320 positive or 360 positive. So this is quite common. It doesn't mean that disease has increased. It means his immunity is increased. But if you measure the disease in the form of titers of Vidal test, then you might say that after giving homeopathic remedy, the symptoms vanished, but disease still remains. And this is a wrong interference or wrong inference drawn from such a thing. And this is what the Hahnemannian concept is there to explain about why Upland says such a thing. So Upland sentence remains to be based upon such a thing, because allopaths considers that disease is caused because something is entered in your body and that something is causing the disease. So if that something material remains to be there inside, they consider that disease remains. But actually, if you go through the human inner nature, you'll find there are many varieties. In fact, in millions, there are bacteria, there are viruses, there are parasites which are present inside our body. And still you never suffers from the disease. So are really they are the causes of disease? Really they are the true causes of the diseases? They are not true causes of the disease because your vital force is in a normal state, because of which you are not getting suffered because of this. And if you measure disease in the form of such a material, naturally you will use the same sentence as used by the Upland. And this is the reason why he has made such a wrong statement against the homeopathy, that homeopathy can remove the symptoms, but disease remains. And what he says at the last, so dreadful is still the blindness of old pathology. And this is the even present situation is one and same. No wonder that it could only produce a system of therapeutics which is solely occupied with scouring out the poor patient. Scouring out means to remove the bad part, and this is what they do. They always give that this is still there in the form of pathology, in the form of material, and just to remove that material is their line of treatment, or remove that pathology is their line of treatment. This is not so, and that's why Hahnemann have criticized the Upland's criticism against the homeopathy, and he has answered the criticism of Upland, that is, homeopathy can remove symptoms but disease remains. Hahnemann have given two probable answers. Either Upland feels it, number one, he never liked the progress made by the homeopathy, and second, he still considers the cause of the disease and disease in the form of some material. And if you consider disease in the form of material, this statement finds it out true. So this is what he wants to explain in this big footnote to this paragraph. And this footnote one must understand, because from exam point of view, it has a meaning. There were two questions asked over there. One is by Uma, that after homeopathic medicine, is the titers increases? Yes, definitely, Uma. After giving the right homeopathic stimulus, it automatically, we used to talk in homeopathic vital force or vital energy. Ultimately, it is reflected through the immune response. So it should increase. If it is not increasing, your medicine is not right. This is what my consideration is. I have made a dissertation when I passed the MD. I have done one dissertation, expression of the vital force in the state of health, in the state of disease, and the state of recovery. And I have taken the CBC report of each and every patient. For 5 healthy persons I have done, then for 25 cases, out of which 15 were chronic and 15 were acute and 10 were chronic. And that total 30 cases I have done practical work, and I have found it out that whenever we used to prescribe right remedy, it stimulates immune system, it increases the WBC to start with, to fight against the bacteria, and that dissertation had a practical value. So your question, yes, my answer is always yes, because I have done the work. Second is Jyoti, she has asked, sir, what will that antibody level come down after some time when it will not require to fight against any antigen, like when no more disease is there? Yes, definitely. The immune system reacts whenever there is a need. And when antigen is killed, again, coming to the normality is called as a resolution. After acute inflammation, there is a sequelae of an acute inflammation are two. First is resolution, that complete normality or normalization of the inflamed part is a resolution. Or it may lead to the chronic inflammation, because if the debris remains to be there. So it is natural that once the whatever may be the problem is there, and if it has been cured, then automatically it settles down. But it never settles down so easily. It takes its own time, and because they are always in active phase, and that is a good sign. If your immune system is fighting, immune system is in an active state, it definitely works hard. So titer of the antibodies might remain for time being in a increased level, and then it comes down. So this is not wrong, and you have to understand what is happening. Only thing is that you have to look that it is not going beyond control. If it is from, if it goes after you're starting your treatment, if there are antibodies, if WBC they are 10,000, and if after giving your right medicine to the patient who was already in infective phase, and if it goes around 13,000, 14,000, it's not wrong thing. It means your body is reacting. Only thing is that what is happening at the general level of the patient, that's what you have to look for. If his generalities improves, he started functioning, he started eating, his sleep is getting settled, then you should be happy regarding it. You should not consider that increase. And you do it after again period of 1 week, you repeat that, then you'll find that it settles automatically. So these things we have to consider, and you have to logically utilize. And this thought one should warn that correlate your homeopathy with the modern investigation. If you are able to do it, then it is possible to understand it in a proper manner. Yesterday there was one case which was very important and interesting for me. Patient was came to me 1 month back, a small child, nearly about half or 2 years, 1.5 or 2 years, 2 years I think she might be, a case of nephrotic syndrome, whose urine routine shows 4 plus protein, and she was 6 months she was on steroids for the same nephrotic syndrome, and she was just swollen. Her eyes was swollen, her whole body was swollen because of continued use of the steroids. And the patient's parents, they were frustrated by using the steroids, and that's why they came to take homeopathic treatment. And her blood urea was increased, her creatinine was raised, her HB was down, and we started the case in last month. And I started her on the Calcarea Carb LM1 in repeated doses. And yesterday she had a follow-up, and we have done all investigations, because while taking the case it was not done. It was done 3 months back. So to check the investigations, I asked them to go for the USG as well as all those reports. And miraculously, urine shows not a single plus proteins. It was absolutely absent. Second important thing in that report, HB was quite good, 13 gram. Her ESR was only 20. Her WBC count was 13,000. And creatinine was 0.80. Blood urea was in normal range, again 23, 24. So every report found to be normal, and even kidneys, which in earlier reports it was mentioned for early 3 sonographies that cortical differentiation was there, and in this sonography it was no more. So this is what one has to understand. You have to take into consideration the use of all laboratory investigations so that you can treat it in a proper manner, and you have the evidence in your hand to show to the people, yes, this is what is happening after giving your treatment. If you do evidence-based homeopathy, the people always believes on you. So whenever you are treating your patients, always have all those laboratory investigations, reports of investigation, so that you can compare and tell the patients regarding it. So I think that's all for today. Tomorrow we'll turn toward the big aphorism. Already we have discussed that aphorism while learning the first aphorism, but again we'll learn that the concept of vital force. So thank you everyone being there for the today's session. Many people, Dr. Varke sir, Manisha, Dr. Vaishali, Ali is always there, Dr. Anita is there, Karuna is there, Preeti, Ifat, Arshal, thank you, Madhu. So be there again and to learn the homeopathy in such a manner. And again, one more thing, do join today's session. Tomorrow in the Divine School, you'll have a very big feast. Dr. Amol Khandwe, who is the renowned physiotherapist, he is the student of Dr. Raju Sharanpani. We're going to take one session tomorrow in the Divine School. Tomorrow he is the guest lecturer. Don't miss that. That is a very good session for all of you. So, a reminder for that, and thank you being there. We'll meet tomorrow.